What's up everyone? In today's video, I am going to be showing you how to model this military crate with texturing done in Substance Painter. Before we jump into the video, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel and like the video. The summer months are usually pretty slow, so subscribing and liking helps the channel go a long way. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So here we are in Autodesk Maya. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and grab a cube up here in the top left hand corner. Next, I'm going to expand all of my views by pressing the spacebar on the keyboard. Then I am going to scale out this cube, pressing R on the keyboard and scrubbing this little square on the gizmo to the side. You can also select specific faces by going over to face mode in the modeling toolkit. I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this cube by holding down shift and pressing the D key on your keypad. I am also going to move the pivot of this cube by holding D and V on the keypad so that I am able to snap the duplicated cube to the existing cube. Doing this just ensures that my cubes are lining up. If you hold V on your keyboard as you are moving the cube, it will ensure that the pivot is snapping to the vertex of the other cube. I'm going to go into the front view by pressing space on the keypad again. So I'm going to use a duplicate of the top cube by pressing Ctrl D and then pressing R. I'm going to go ahead and scale that in. Going to press W for the move gizmo, move that kind of up above the top and over a bit to the right. And then again pressing R, I'm just going to scale it. If you take a look at the reference image, you'll see that the top kind of has this indented area where those two top wooden pieces are inserted. So we are going to use an edge loop and hold shift on your keyboard, right click on your mouse and go over to insert edge loop. Within the additional menu option, I'm going to make sure that the number here is 2. If it isn't, you may need to just reset your tool. And once we have those, go ahead and hold shift on the keypad again, right click and go to bevel edge. I'm just going to change the fraction to 0.2. I do want to spread them a bit more, so in the modeling toolkit, I'm going to go to vertex mode. I'm going to press R on the keypad and then I'm going to kind of spread them apart a bit more. If you have not already, now would be a good time to save. We're actually going to want to save a bunch of times while we do projects in Maya because Maya does like to crash, so saving is going to save your life. Now that we have saved, we can go ahead and insert another edge loop by holding shift, right click on your mouse. This time we're going to reset our edge loop tool so that we can insert one a bit close to the edge here. Now in the modeling toolkit menu, switch over to face mode. I'm going to go ahead and select the 3 faces at the top on each side and then backspace to delete. Now pressing space on the keypad, we're going to go to the front mode. And then we're going to select these vertices on the second edge loop, expand them outwards as we see in the reference image. We can isolate the top by pressing Ctrl 1 on the keypad. I'm going to work on closing these faces by selecting an edge on the opposite side, holding shift on the keypad, right click on your mouse and bridge. If you press G on your keypad, it will repeat the last action you did. So since our last action was bridge, each time that I want to bridge again, as long as I don't do a new action, I can press G and it will repeat the bridge. Now with this top cube selected, and then in the modeling toolkit, I'm going to go to face mode and select that bottom face. Hit shift, right click, extrude. I'm going to select this little power symbol that shows up so that it extrudes downwards. And then in vertex mode, I'm going to select the vertices on the left hand side, snap those to the top left, and then I'm going to take the vertices on the right hand side and snap those to the top right. Again, holding V on a keypad is going to allow you to move and snap those vertices to the vertices near it. And then I'm going to select this top face and scale that inwards so it matches the reference image. Selecting this edge loop, I'm going to hold shift on the keypad, right click and go to bevel. Change the fraction to 0.1, seems okay with a segment of 2. Actually, I'm going to do 0.05 for the fraction, make it a bit smaller. Face mode again, I'm just going to scale in the bottom face. Standing a bit high, so I'm going to bring down the top face. And then I'm just going to duplicate this mesh over, bring it over with W on the keypad. This next part you don't really have to do if you're aiming for a low poly model, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to select all of the edges on the outside of the top, and I'm going to go ahead and bevel. Bevels are naturally good for the light and the shadows catching your edges in a realistic way. Again, to get to the bevel option, you're going to hold shift on your keypad, right click and bevel. After taking a look at the reference image, it does look like the top two wooden parts have an extra edge loop, so I'm going to go ahead and hold shift, right click on the mouse and insert edge loop. Just going to scale that out so it matches the overall shape in the reference image. And then I'm going to go ahead and bevel with a very small fraction. Again, I'm going to bevel the outer edges of our top wooden pieces. The bottom part of this military crate is the same as the top, so I'm just going to duplicate the top, hitting shift and D on the keypad, and then I'm going to rotate it 180 degrees by hitting E on the keypad and then using this gizmo to kind of flip it around. You can ensure you hit a full 180 degrees by going in the channel box editor and checking the right hand side. I'm going to go to vertex mode. I'm going to select the top vertices and bring them down a bit. It looks like the two wooden pieces at the top are also at the bottom. So to easily duplicate those to the bottom, I'm going to first select both of them and group them together by going up to edit group, where you can hit Ctrl G on your keypad. And then selecting that group, I'm going to again press E on the keypad to rotate, and then I'm going to rotate it 180 degrees. And then pressing W, I'm just going to move it down to the bottom. Looks like the bottom ones might be a little thicker, so I'm just going to take the bottom vertices and move them down a bit. It looks like I actually didn't duplicate the top one, so let me try to redo this again. Okay, that looks a lot better. I'm gonna bring the bottom wood pieces scaled a little outwards. Now I want to get started on those side wood pieces. So to get started on those, I'm going to go ahead and add another cube. I'm going to bring it over here to the side and kind of place it in the same location that it is in the reference image. Scale it out using face mode. I'm going to select this outer face. I'm going to extrude by going to shift, right click and extrude. In selecting that power symbol, I'm going to move it outwards, scale it inwards using R. This does match the overall shape. I'm just going to take these vertices in vertex mode and move them over. As I'm looking at this shape in comparison to my crate and the reference image, I can tell that the reference image is a bit more wide. So I'm going to select all of the mesh in my viewport. I'm going to go to vertex mode and I'm going to move these vertices outwards just to make my crate a bit more wide. This is going to allow me to increase the size of that wooden piece so that, relatively speaking, it matches the reference image. So now I'm just going to select all of the edges on this mesh and I'm going to bevel them with a fraction of 0.2. This doesn't look too bad, except I feel the outer face is a bit more wide, so I'm just going to scale this inwards. This looks better, so I'm just going to shift D on the keypad, duplicating it over to the other side. And another thing I noticed from the reference image is this bottom part. I'm going to move this bottom part scaled inwards. So similar to the top two wooden pieces, we're going to go ahead and select these two side wooden pieces and group them together. And then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to insert two edge loops on the top. This is going to allow me to have a middle vertex that I can duplicate these two wooden pieces over to the side symmetrically. In order to do this, I'm going to take the pivot of that group. I'm going to move that pivot to this new vertex point of the top, and on the keypad I'm going to hold Control Shift and the letter D, and that is going to duplicate that group over to the other side. The good thing about this military crate is a lot of these pieces can be duplicated over. So what I'm going to do for that outside wooden piece is I'm going to take one of these wooden pieces, I'm going to duplicate it by hitting Shift D on the keypad, and I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees. With it rotated, I'm going to select the vertices in vertex mode, and I'm going to move them up to make this shape a little bit more narrow. I'm also going to bring in the outside vertices. And then I'm going to pull these vertices on the left hand side all the way over to the other side. Again, I'm going to move the pivot of this object to the middle of the top piece so that I can duplicate it over to the other side. I'm going to rotate it a bit just because not all pieces are completely straight in real life, so we do want some things to look a little off. And our next accomplishment is to create the screws. So I'm going to start that by selecting a cylinder in the top left hand corner. And then I'm going to go over to the inputs in the channel box editor and switch my subdivision axis to a smaller number. Scaling this down, I'm just going to move it into an appropriate place of that wood piece according to the reference image. And then in face mode, I'm going to select a few of these faces, deselect the front faces so I can delete out the, and then I'm going to select this edge loop and I'm going to scale it inwards. I am then going to extrude it inwards a couple of times and then extrude it back. I don't want to fully model the screw. I just want something that kind of looks like the screw, so we can avoid so much geometry. And then I'm going to take the edge of this screw and I'm going to scale it inwards and then bevel those edges so it's a bit more round. And this looks pretty decent for a screw for me. It doesn't need to be too overly complex since it is inserted within the wood. I'm going to go ahead and just soften the edges and this is good enough. Then I'm just going to duplicate this screw over into the other places that it is according to the reference image. Again, as I'm duplicating these screws, I want to think about how not all screws are mechanically placed inside of wood pieces, right? We have some screws that are sometimes slanted in, some screws that are way too in there, and then some screws that actually made it in there pretty good. So we want to think about all of that as we address the placement of these screws in the wood. Next, we want to work on the holes in the wood for these screws. So I'm going to go ahead and insert some edge loops, again by holding shift, right click on the mouse and insert edge loop. Make sure that we reset our tool. And we're going to insert some edge loops around these screws. Over on the right hand side in the modeling toolkit, you can switch your transform constraint to edge so that when you straighten out these edge loops, it won't deform or alter the shape of your mesh. So now that I have some pretty decent edge loops, I'm going to go to face mode and I'm going to select this face behind the screw. Holding shift and right click, I'm going to go ahead and add divisions and we're going to make this the number 2. Then again, holding shift right click, we're going to go ahead to circleize components, and that is going to turn this divided geometry into a circle. And I'm going to do the same thing to the square for the other screw. I'm going to move it, but I want to make sure I turn off the transform constraint so it doesn't alter my circle. Now I'm going to go ahead and select those geometry that make up the circle. I'm going to hit shift, right click, and extrude. Make a small offset. I'm going to go ahead and do that to the other hole that we've created, or the other circle that we've created. And then selecting the faces of these geometry that's created the circle, I'm going to go ahead and hold shift, right click, extrude one more time, pressing that battery, and then we're going to extrude it inwards, and that's going to give us this visual of a hole in these pieces of wood. Now you'll notice that we have created some problem geometry, and that problem geometry are actually n-gon, are geometry with more than 4 vertices. So we're going to want to use our connect component tool to fix this. If you select a couple of vertices and you hold shift, right click, connect components, that will create an edge loop between the 2 vertices that you have selected, and we can easily fix these n-gons that we have created. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And there's no science to this. You don't have to follow it exactly. If you have a way that's going to give you even less geometry, that's even better. And we're just going to go ahead and go through and fix these newly created n-gons. You can make sure that you fixed all of your n-gons by going up to mesh cleanup, and it should highlight the areas that are giving you problem geometry, or in other words, n-gons. So we're going to go ahead and do the same process on the other side, using a couple of those faces, adding divisions to them, circularizing that new geometry, extruding that new geometry to create an offset, and then extruding it inwards to give it that look of a hole within the wood. And the last step is to fix that problem geometry. So I'm going to go through that process. So looking pretty good. As you're going through this, you may notice that you have some hard edges. That's pretty easy to fix. If you select those edges that you notice are showing as hard edges, you can go ahead and hold a shift on your keypad, right click, and soften edges. That should fix that problem. The hinges will be next. So to start on the first hinge at the top, we're going to go ahead and create a plane. In the channel box editor for this plane, we want to change the subdivisions to 1 for the width and the height. And then we're just going to move that over on the side of one of those wood pieces. I'm going to scale it in to kind of match the reference image. The same way you can use the face mode to adjust the scale, you can also use edge mode over in the modeling toolkit. Now we're going to take this front edge and we're going to extrude it downward. Based on the reference image, it looks like it goes just above this meet between the top and the bottom. And then we're going to extrude this edge again outwards. And then we're going to extrude it one more time upward. Now selecting those two edges inside, we're going to bevel them and kind of create a smooth curve using the fraction and the segments of the bevel. That doesn't look too bad, so we're going to go ahead and select the 90-degree edge and again bevel that so we can smooth out that transition using the fractions and the segment. And we're going to work on those holes for the screws. I'm going to go ahead and go to insert edge loop, select the multiple edge loops and input the number 1 so we can have one directly down middle equal from the outer edges. And then it looks like we have 3 holes, so I'm going to go ahead and insert 3 equal edge loops. With those edge loops created, I'm going to go ahead and select the vertices, and I'm going to hold shift, right click, chamfer vertices. With that new geometry, I'm going to select the faces, and I'm going to go to add divisions to faces, and then we're going to make the divisions 2. Again, one by one, I'm going to select that new geometry, and I'm going to circleize the components to make some circles here. I'm going to go into the top view and I'm going to select these newly created circles. I'm going to hold shift, right click and extrude to create an offset. And then selecting that geometry, I'm going to delete them out and we have a pretty decent looking hinge for the top. Now to make this hinge thicker, I'm going to go to the extrude. I'm just going to use the outside arrow, pull it out. Now I'm going to select the inner edges of these circles and I'm going to bevel. To work on the ring of this hinge, I'm gonna go ahead and create a torus. In a channel box editor for the subdivision axis, I'm gonna change that to 4. And then pressing E on the keypad, I'm going to rotate this 45 degrees. Again, back to the channel box editor, we're going to lower the section radius. We're going to need to center pivot, delete history, freeze transforms up here in the top ribbon, and then we can rotate this shape 90 degrees. I'm gonna go ahead and push it back into this hinge and just kind of line it up and scale it down until it fits. And then we can go ahead and select these outer edges and bevel them. I think a good fraction here, or a good amount of segments, will be 3, and then we can make that fraction like a 0.3. Adding another cube, we're going to go ahead and work on the bottom of the hinge. Now this part of the hinge I can't see fully based on the reference image, so we're just going to infer what the shape looks like with the information that we are given. So I'm just going to scale this cube in so it's inside of that ring. Again, to scale, you're going to press R on the keypad. We can also use the face mode over in the modeling toolkit to kind of move those around. Now based on the image, it looks like this bottom part in the back is a little higher than the front. So I'm going to select that edge and move it upward. Then I'm going to go to the Insert Edge Loop menu by holding Shift, right click. I'm going to reset my tool. Then I'm going to insert an edge kind of right above where this ring is inserting the cube. And then in that same Insert Edge Loop menu, you might have to go to Object Mode and then select Insert Edge Loop again. We're going to select 2 equal edge loops and insert those in the middle. Selecting those 2 new edge loops, just going to scale them apart from each other using R on the keypad. And then with face mode selected, I'm going to go ahead and select the front face, the top face, and the back faces and backspace to delete them out. I think I'll also want to delete this back face as well. Selecting these two edges, I'm going to go ahead and bevel. This bevel isn't as large as I would like, so I'm actually going to take these top two edges and move them back so we can have a good amount of space for our beveling. I'm going to go ahead and fix these n-gons we've created by connecting the vertices. So I'm going to pull this mesh down so that we can chamfer the vertices where that ring is intersecting the shape. And then we're going to select that new face, shift right click, add divisions to faces, and again circleize components. In the circleize components menu, we're going to go ahead and add a twist so that these edge loops aren't intersecting with each other as much, and then we can go ahead and scale down these new circles. I'm not too huge of a fan of how these edge loops are kind of interacting with each other, so I'm going to go ahead and fix those. With all of those edge loops looking a little better, I'm going to go ahead and select the circles that we've created and create an offset. Here you'll notice that there are some hard edges, but softened edges will not work in this case. The reason being is because these vertices are actually a little bit further than the edge behind it. So we're going to want to go into front mode and kind of line these up accordingly. Looking at the reference image, you can kind of see this double circle kind of inset inside of the bottom hinge, so we're going to work on that next. To do this, we're going to go ahead and add a cylinder. Switch over to our side view. Going to rotate the cylinder 90 degrees, scale it down, and again decrease the subdivision axis. And then we can go ahead and duplicate this cylinder, moving the pivot to the top and snapping it to the bottom of the previous cylinder. We want to delete out the back sides of these cylinders to make them easier to work with. After that is done, with both of the cylinders selected, actually let me go to mesh display reverse so we can see it a bit better here on the side. With both of them selected, we're going to go to mesh combine. We're going to merge those two vertices in the middle to the center by holding shift, right click, merge, and merge to center, and select the outer edge of this shape, extruding it out. This is going to allow us to take those outer vertices and merge those together as well. Now we have what looks like that double circle shape that we can create an inset into our lower hinge with. To do this, let's go ahead and select that new shape and move it over to the side. We are then going to select the edge of this shape and extrude it out until it is inside our hinge. We are going to first select our new shape, and then we are going to select our hinge. We're going to go up to mesh, boolean, and then difference. So now you can see that boolean has made the same shape within our hinge, and we can just delete history and freeze transforms. Now, of course, this boolean has created some utterly ridiculous endgons, and we are going to work on fixing those again by selecting vertices and connecting components by holding shift, right click, and connect components. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that for the next couple minutes. You will notice that I am creating kind of some manual edge loops. You can use the multi-cut tool to create those by holding shift, right click, and then multi-cut. You also notice that I'm not too much worried about making sure those edge loops go all the way to the other side, and that is because we're going to end up cutting the side that doesn't have this new shape, and we're going to mirror over the side that does, just so we don't have to end up doing this twice. So here we are, we've went ahead and fixed all of those issues with the n-gons. I'm going to insert an edge loop right down the middle. I'm going to go into face mode. I'm going to delete the side that does not have this new inset. I'm going to move the pivot of this shape to the middle. I'm going to hit Control Shift D to duplicate it over to the other side. I'm going to go to Mesh Combine so that it is now one shape. Going into vertex mode, I'm going to select those middle vertices and I'm going to merge the vertices. Now we have successfully mirrored over the side with the inset over to the other side without having to do the same thing twice. So now we work on that little cylinder that is right above our ring. Using vertex mode, we can just make sure that this cylinder is going through the hinge from left to right. Looking at the reference image, I'm going to go ahead and insert 2 edge loops right down the middle, and I'm going to scale them out. And then I'm going to select the face loops that we have created on the edges of the cylinder by clicking one face and then double clicking the one next to it, and I'm going to extrude them out. And then selecting these new edges, I'm going to go ahead and bevel them. I do feel there should be a bit more space between the ring and that top cylinder, so I'm just going to select both of these meshes, the ring and the hinge. I'm going to go to vertex mode. I'm just going to select those vertices and pull them down. The next part is the back of this hinge, so we're going to create another cube from the left hand side. I want to actually group this hinge together so we can isolate it. I'm going to move this new cube to the middle and scale it down so it is inside the existing hinge. Using the insert edge loop tool, I'm going to reset it and then create an edge loop a bit close to the back of this cube, and then create 2 equal edge loops, scaling those outwards. I want to go ahead and create another edge loop that is just above the ring. And then I'm going to go ahead and delete out these couple of faces. Taking this front face, I'm going to extrude it inwards, of course by holding shift, right click, and extrude. That is going to create a problem for us at the bottom of this mesh, so I'm going to isolate it and delete out those problematic faces. Looks like I have a bit of a problem, so I'm going to delete out these faces and then just re-bridge these edges. I'm not sure what happened there, but easy fix. Based off of the reference image, I'm actually going to get rid of this face. And then I'm also going to get rid of these faces. I'm going to take these edges, extrude them back. I need to remove these 3 faces. And then I'm going to go ahead and bridge these edges close. Okay, yes, this works a lot better. That is going to allow me to select these 4 edges, bevel them by holding shift, right click, bevel. If you find that you're having issues here like I am, you may just need to delete some of these faces and re-bridge them. And adjust the fraction and segments so we can have a pretty smooth transition. Okay, then I'm just going to go to my insert edge loop menu. I'm going to make this number 6 since we have 6 edges going down this face loop. And I'm going to insert these 6 edges on the back of our object. This is going to allow me to connect the vertices and remove those endgons. With all that done, I'm going to go ahead and select the edges of my object and bevel. This bevel may cause you to have a couple n-gons at the top, which is not a problem at all. You can just select a couple of those vertices and connect them. It looks like we have another type of screw here at the top, so I'm going to create a cylinder, decrease the subdivision axis in the channel box editor. I'm going to go ahead and add a subdivision cap this time. Selecting that inner face, I'm going to switch my scale settings to component and scale that outwards. With those top faces selected, I just want to delete those out, and then I'm going to re-bridge these edges into quads. And doing that is going to allow us to select the inside faces, scale them inwards. We can go ahead and snap some of these vertices so that they are straight lines. Extrude offset, and then extrude it inwards. Now selecting the outer edges, I'm going to go ahead and bevel. Then we can just move this into place. We can duplicate these screws into the other holes. Rotate them around and just kind of make them a bit uneven so they don't all look straight. Moving on to the hinge in the back, I'm going to go ahead and add another plane, changing the subdivisions to 1 for the width and the height in the channel box editor. I'm going to go ahead and move this plane towards the back of the box. Edge mode in the modeling toolkit, selecting this edge here and extruding downwards. Extruding again outwards. G on the keypad to repeat your last action. We're going to extrude one more time going up. And then another time going inwards. In the shift right click menu for insert edge loop, I'm going to go ahead and enter 2 equal edge loops, and then pressing R, scale them outwards. In the edge menu again, going to select these 2 edges, bevel, change the segment to 0.7 with 2 segments. Again, selecting this edge at the top, I'm going to go ahead and bevel that to kind of smooth out that transition as well. Last edge here at the bottom, I'm going to add a bevel. Back into my insert edge loop menu, I'm going to insert an edge kind of right above this line here. And then in face mode, I'm going to delete out these few faces. That's going to match our back hinge. Working on those holes for the screws, I'm going to go ahead and go back into my insert edge loop menu, add in a couple of edge loops. Add divisions to faces and change those divisions to 2. Selecting these new geometry, going to right or shift right click, circleize components. What I'm doing here, which is easier, I'm going to select all of this geometry by holding shift, and then I deselect geometry by holding control. Again, extruding and adding an offset. I'm going to go ahead and delete out this inner geometry to create the holes for our screws. In vertex mode, I'm just going to space these out a bit to match the reference image of a hinge I have here on Google. And per usual, circleizing or adding divisions to existing geometry will create some problem geometry, so we're going to go ahead and use the connect components to fix these n-gons that we have created. Again, you'll notice that there are some hard edges. You can just select those edges, shift right click and soften edges. That should fix the hard edge problem there. Looking at the reference image, it looks like the bottom half of this hinge is sort of similar to this top half. So I'm just going to duplicate this shape that we've just created and rotate it using the letter E on the keypad to match the location and placement within the reference image. With this in place, I'm going to take the faces that are on the outside and backspace to delete those, keeping this kind of face loop here in the middle. It's super useful to use all of your views to kind of see how your objects are holding up on the side, front, and top. So pressing the space bar will allow you to kind of navigate between those. Now that I have this piece in place, I'm going to take this edge and extrude it up. And then again extruding it inward. So selecting these outer edges, I'm going to go ahead and add a bevel. Now that I am satisfied with the placement, I'm going to go ahead and extrude this shape and then go up to mesh display reverse so that the normals flip and the mesh is no longer black. This looks pretty good. Selecting all of the edges on our shape, I'm going to go ahead and add bevels. Again, you do not need to add bevels if you're aiming for a low poly mesh. The last thing I noticed about this hinge from the reference image is it has this cylinder piece on the inside of these loops. So I'm going to go ahead and add a cylinder, reducing the subdivision axis, going to rotate it, scale it down, and make sure that it is sitting inside of those two loops. Last but not least, on the cylinder, I'm going to select the outer faces, going to extrude and add an offset, going to hit extrude again, pushing these faces inward. Selecting the edges on the outside of the cylinder, I'm going to add a bevel. It also looks a bit better smooth, so I'm going to add a smooth modifier onto the cylinder. I want to model the inside of this box as well, so it's going to be important that I group the parts of this crate that go together, because we'll be adding pivots to the top to ensure that we can open that at a legit 90-degree angle. So you'll notice that I am grabbing the hinges, grouping all of those parts together, naming them in the outliner. I'm taking all of the top wooden parts, grouping all of those together, and making sure that I am naming those in the outliner. And then once I have the top grouped together successfully, I'm going to move this pivot to the middle of the cylinder in our hinge, and I'm going to, selecting E on the keypad, rotate it at a 90-degree angle, and that's going to allow us to appropriately open the top of the box. As you can see in the reference image, the inside of this box isn't one piece, it's actually 4 pieces. So I'm going to use the cube that we currently have, I'm going to scale it, and then make sure that is 4 pieces that line up to the box, adding some bevels to the edges. The last thing is kind of this folded plane at the bottom, so I'm just going to add a plane, change the subdivision axes to 1. I'm going to line this plane up with the bottom of the box. In my insert edge loop menu, I'm going to add 30 equal edge loops, and then in edge mode from the modeling toolkit, I'm going to select every other edge, and then I'm going to move those edges up to kind of give us that folded look. To top it off, I'm just going to, with those edges selected, add a small bevel, and now we have that kind of folded plane at the bottom of the box completed. And that completes the modeling portion of our military crate. And here we are with our military crate in Substance Painter. I really don't have much step-by-step guidance for texturing in Substance Painter. Texturing, in my opinion, is more of an art than a science. But as this time-lapse continues, I'm just going to give some guidance of how I approached the texturing process. So my primary concern was making sure that I was able to get that wood grain texture detail. As we know, we did all of the modeling in Maya, and we really didn't do any sculpting in any program like ZBrush. So the height maps is going to be very important in our texturing process. So before adding any base color, I started out with height and roughness maps, adjusting accordingly. I pretty much used a variety of the grunge wood found in the texturing menu. I altered between those textures on the main form of the box and the side pieces of the wood so that we can see some variation in the texturing. After focusing on the overall wood grain, I then went in to focus on the edge wear. Thankfully, there's a lot of edge wear in the smart masks that I kind of bounced in between to get some good edge variation on the military box. After I was satisfied with the wood grain and the edgeware, that's when I moved on to the base colors. Trying to get as close to the reference image's base color as possible, but also adding some variation so that the colors didn't look flat. So I again bounced in between the smart masks for occlusion, dirt generators. To further enhance the look of the edgeware, I also added some color there. For the wood grain layers, I duplicated those and then I darkened them. So you can kind of see that variation in the wood grain. and then just topping it off with scratches here and there. added some generic font alphas that came with Substance Painter for the lettering on the side of the military crate. And honestly, that's pretty much it. So I hope you enjoyed the video, and please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this. Thank you.